Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wandering Podcast, where we take advisement from outside the box. I'm Rihanna Ritter, your host. I'm an intuitive, sexuality, and authentic expression coach. Are you an accomplished professional who plays the part of having it all figured out? Who's strong for everyone else, but feels lonely, misunderstood, like you can't tell anybody the truth about how stressed you are, how not passionate you are about your life and all that you've created? I guide my clients to deep, lasting fulfillment. I re-engage them with their bodies, their pleasure, their desire. I help them align to enjoy fulfillment and prosperity in all areas of their lives. Today, my guest is Mark Mears. He's a #1 best-selling author, keynote speaker, consultant, and visionary business leader. He has a significant track record of building stakeholder value, driving innovation and profitable growth among world-class high-profile brands such as PepsiCo, Pizza Hut, McDonald's, Frito-Lay, JCPenney, NBCUniversal, and the Cheesecake Factory. Today, Mark serves as founder and chief growth officer for Leaf Growth Ventures, LLC, a consulting firm inspiring individuals, teams, and organizations to find purpose in fulfilling their true growth potential while making a positive, lasting difference in the world. Mark has just released his new book titled The Purposeful Growth Revolution: 4 Ways to Grow from Leader to Legacy Builder. Mark is also a member of the Senior Leader Network within Conscious Capitalism, a global organization whose mission he shares, elevating humanity through business. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you, Rihanna. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, founder and chief growth officer for Leaf Growth Ventures. Tell us about what inspired you to start that organization.
Yeah, it's an interesting story that you hear the phrase, it's always darkest before the dawn, right? Well, in this case, it was. I go back to February 21st, 2013. We were living in the LA area, and I was working as the president of a $500 million casual restaurant dining chain, and we were owned by a parent company that was publicly traded, had 2 other concepts: a restaurant chain and a food service products division. And I was recruited there from my role as senior VP and chief marketing officer from the Cheesecake Factory. And the goal was to turn the brand around from double-digit negative in sales to research and put together a new brand positioning that was more contemporary and more relevant for the way people want to dine today, and also a new kind of concept extension that can earn the right to capital so that we could grow. We had 145 restaurants in 24 states. And so I built a team, and we had this noble purpose, and we were turning the brand around, and maybe a little too quickly, because after 2 years, we were positive in sales. We had a new, refreshing, contemporary brand positioning that helped change our menu, our design and decor, as well as a new concept extension that had beaten our pro forma return on invested capital by several months. We'd done everything we could. As someone growing up in Kansas, we were asked to go get the witch's broom, and we did. And so here we are, thinking this is going to be the great turnaround. And I used what I called, what I've heard called the rule of threes. And that suggests if you focus on 3 things, you'll have, better clarity, alignment, and productivity that will lead to better performance. And my 3 things were leadership, engagement, and accountability. And I used it in every communication. I'd say Rihanna is leading her team and doing a wonderful job of X, Y, and Z, or Rihanna is engaging her team on a deeper level, and look what they're doing, or Rihanna is holding her team accountable for results, and now look at their performance month over month or whatever, right? So that was my mantra, and we were burning the candle at both ends. We were sacrificing for this noble cause. This was going to be the career defining moment for each of us, until I got a call one day from the CEO who said, the board has decided to move in a different direction. Instead of giving us the capital that we'd earned and that they promised me, when they recruited me from the Cheesecake Factory, as well as I promised executive team members who joined under my watch, oh, but don't worry, Mark, you're gonna lead the sale process, but you can't tell anybody. So it was crazy. And I lived out in Valencia, which is a suburb north and east of LA, and our offices were in Orange County, which is south and west of LA. And if you know anything about LA, that's about 2.5 hours each way of driving. So I couldn't really do that very long. It was untenable. So I got a hotel right across the street from John Wayne Airport, which was also right near our office. And after dinner on Sunday night and putting the kids to bed, I would drive down and I'd work a long day Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And sometime, somewhere after rush hour abated a bit, which hardly ever does in LA, but it does a little bit. And then, but before construction starts, because that's a thing
Yeah.
at night, right?
Yeah.
I would drive home and I'd be around on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for my family. And that's when I wasn't traveling to Ohio, where the parent company was based, for board meetings, conference calls, earnings calls, you name it, or visiting one of our 145 restaurants in 24 states, only to be told the board has decided to move in different directions. So now I'm having to rejigger my brain around this whole thing and change my mindset from, where we thought we were going to where we are now going and lead in a different way. And then we had sale presentations where we'd have a lot of private equity firm tire kickers who were coming in, and we'd be doing these long presentations. And then we hit upon one that was a strategic play who owned other restaurant concepts, who understood our business, and actually had manufacturing facilities that we could derive some of our products from. We thought it was the best possible outcome. The deal closed on a Friday, and we're drinking champagne in celebration over a weekend. But on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, I had a pre-scheduled meeting to meet with the new CEO. We were going to plot our future together. At 8:05, I'm out the door. We've decided to move in a different direction. I'm like, what, over the weekend? So I
What?
take what I can get, in a box, and I drive home. Like, so that just happened. And this was, again, February 21st, 2013. It's a little over 10 years ago. And that's about the time the first signs of spring start to emerge in Southern California. So after a fitful night of sleep, I take the dog out back, do his business, and we had a fig tree that was barren in our backyard from the 5 or 6 weeks of winter that we do get. And so, as God is my witness, Rihanna, as the sun was coming up over this wall in our backyard, it shone on that fig tree. On one branch was a tiny little green sprig of a green leaf just starting to bud. And I got this epiphany in that moment that a leaf is a symbol of growth and rebirth. And I got to thinking, well, you know, I took the dog inside, kind of got on my computer, started kind of banging out a treatment for this whole idea about a leaf. Because I, I don't believe in coincidences. This was an epiphany that literally has changed my career trajectory in my life and the second act of where I'm going. And I got to thinking, though, as I was like kind of taking a sketch pad, and I said, well, man, I led with leadership engagement and accountability. I focused on those three things. We did everything we were asked to do. What's missing? Well, I realized in that moment what was missing was fulfillment. Again, burning the candle at both ends, chasing numbers for the sake of numbers. We were exhausted, but we were thinking we were doing this noble cause to be part of the turnaround for the ages. And what was missing was fulfillment, because not only myself, but my whole team got shown the door within a couple of weeks. They ended up moving the office from Southern California to their US headquarters in Dallas. Everything they said they wouldn't do, they did. And so that wasn't very fulfilling. And so I put that word, and then I said, oh my gosh, what is now, a change from the rule of threes, I now believe in the higher power of fours, because it actually spelled an acronym: LEAF: leadership, engagement, accountability, and fulfillment. And so I sketched out this four-circle Venn diagram that I felt was how each of it were intertwined. They're not linear concepts. You don't go from leadership to engagement to accountability and fulfillment. You do them all integrated at the same time. And I said, well, what's at the epicenter of that model? It's purposeful growth. That fig tree in my backyard only knows how to be a fig tree. Its purpose is to grow fig leaves. All growth, as we learned in middle school science, in a plant or a tree comes from the leaf through the magic of photosynthesis. So I'm writing all this stuff down and I'm thinking I've hit on a model that really could be a primer or something that could help others along their purposeful growth journey. So I started working on it and, had kind of a cathartic hobby because I had some time on my hands. And then I'd go back to another, C-level position. I'd pull it out every now and then. It was originally just a presentation. And then people said, Mark, this is really good. It should be a book. I'm like, I'm not an author. But I'm a pretty good writer. And so I thought, well, I'll just work on it off and on. And so I did. But it was like an idea that chased me until a couple of years ago. I decided I'm going to finish it and it's going to be the foundation for a consulting practice, speaking and mentoring and coaching business where I can help inspire individuals, teams, and organizations to find their purpose in fulfilling their true growth potential. And as you mentioned, in doing so, help make a positive, lasting difference in the world. So I know it's a long story, but that's literally how I got here. And I'm so fortunate to be able to spend some time with you today and unpacking it a bit further.
Yeah, I love what you said about not believing in coincidences. Life is a lot easier when you don't believe in coincidences.
Well, I've learned, Rihanna, you have to keep your eyes and your heart open. I believe there are forces, while I might be a spiritual being as it relates to my religion, others may not be, but I think most of us feel there's a connection in the universe to each other. And I think it's working all the time. I don't think it takes a coffee break. I think it's working all the time, but we have to be open to it. And for me, being open, in when I say darkest before the dawn, I cannot tell you what a gut punch that day was for me and how difficult that night of sleep was for me. And to get up in the morning, like again, just shaking my head, like, so that just happened. And then as the sun went over the wall in the backyard and it shone on a fig tree, I could have dismissed it. But I was open-minded and open-hearted to seeing something that somebody wanted me to see and inspire me in a way that in my darkest hour could turn into a platform that could help so many more people than just myself. I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah, it's absolutely like synchronicities are all around us, and there's always some helpful sign that's available to guide us if we're willing to see it. But when
Yeah.
we get that into that mindset of like too much logic, too much science, too much fact-based, prove it to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but there's a chapter in my book, and I'll hold it up for your viewers. Your listeners can't see it, but it's the Purposeful Growth Revolution, 4 ways to grow from leader to legacy builder. And I point out the image of the trunk and branches that look like a hand reaching upward toward the leaf where all growth happens. And I thank my cover artist for that because she captured the essence of what I was looking for. And it really it is a symbol of growth and rebirth and the source of all growth. And so for me, that also is not a coincidence. How I was able to find the right person to capture the essence of what I was trying to do. And I found an editor who took my words and made them even better. And so now I'm proud that it's an Amazon bestseller. And I never thought I'd write one book, and I certainly never thought I'd finish it. You know that 96% of the people who say they're writing a book never finish? I did not want
I
to be
believe
one of
it.
those 96%. So I, I literally took a step out on faith and left, not laughing, trust me, it was a difficult decision, um, my last C-level position as a chief marketing officer. And I said, if I don't do this now, I might not ever do it. And I had some life events that were taking place at that time. Um, it sounds like a bad country song. My dog died, my wife left, my mom passed away, and my daughters graduated and then ultimately moved out. And I downsized from, a big house on a golf course to, a more humble two-bedroom townhome. And I said, all this is a transition, in multiple transitions at one time. It's a lot to bear, but I'm going to have faith that I'm doing it for the right reasons because I feel called to do this. And so I've faithfully been following it. And after, some months, it was almost like layers of burden started lifting off my shoulders. And later that fall, I remember going to the door when the box from Amazon showed up, and it was my test copy. And I opened up that box and I saw my name on it, and I saw this beautiful book that I'd been working so hard and so faithfully on. And I just had this wave of emotion. And then later, when I earned bestseller status, it was just like confirmation that I'm in, doing the right thing and I'm moving in the right direction for what I call purposeful action. And I can't tell you, I was working on one of the chapters called Get the FUD Out. And FUD is an acronym. You'll see that I like acronyms. Stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt, and delay. The fear of, well, what if this isn't any good? What will they think? Will this tarnish the reputation that I had as a corporate America team guy? And now people might think, well, he's not that smart. And then that led to uncertainty. Am I willing to give up and risk the comfort of a C-level position? And I say comfort because it comes with, pay and benefits. And now I have none to risk it for what I feel called in my heart to do. And then the doubts that can creep in, like, background voices and like wet cement can begin to harden if you give them power. Nobody knows who I am. I'm not some rock star CEO or media personality. Who wants to hear from me? What value do I have to give to the world? And am I even worthy of success? All those thoughts were going through my head. And you know what that leads to? Delay, right? The reason the book took so long and I put it off is because I had all those thoughts going on in my head that I had to wrestle with until I finally just took that leap on faith. And I wrote the chapter with that in mind, but I felt like it wasn't finished. All I talked about was what I went through and the FUD. But in my pain of going through those many life transitions all at the same time, as well as this FUD of putting a book out into the world, I found the antidote to FUD. You want to hear it?
Mhm.
Faith overcomes fear. Faith in a higher power, of course, but faith in yourself and faith in the idea that you have been given can overcome the fear you have. And then hope can overcome uncertainty. The hope of this richly imagined future where I'm envisioning a new career path that is so different from someone who was a workaholic, type A plus personality, serial achiever, and still recovering perfectionist, to where I felt like I had freedom to plot a new future that could help so many more people. And then that led to belief in myself, belief in this idea, and having that overcome the doubts that had been hardening like wet cement. And all of a sudden, one by one, they would start to go away. That led to, okay, what are we going to do about it? And it's not only action, but purposeful action can overcome the paralysis of delay. Someone once told me when I was going through all that stuff, Mark, when it feels like you're walking through hell, keep walking, right? So not only did I take action, because sometimes that can just be busyness and like a chicken with your head cut off, you're just trying to get stuff done and feel productive. It's purposeful action. What is your purpose? And so I came up with a purpose statement, which is I don't want to just make money and retire. I want to make a difference and inspire. And that means making a difference in the lives of others and inspiring them to want to do likewise. So it creates this virtuous cycle of reciprocity or what I call paying it backward. I say that because most people say, Mark, isn't it pay it forward? And no, it's pay it backward because I believe words matter. And like a prism, I like to twist things and let the light kind of shine and show different color patterns than maybe if you just kept it in one area. And so when I go to Starbucks, not only am I a growth junkie, I love growth in all of its forms, personal, relational, professional, and spiritual. And I'm also a coffee junkie. I got to be honest with you. I love Starbucks. So when I go to Starbucks and I go to the drive-through, I will pay for the car behind me. I can't physically pay for the car in front of me. They've already gone. And when I get up to the window and I'll simply say to the barista, just tell them, God bless you, your debt has been paid. And I'll drive away and I'll say a silent prayer for them. They don't know me, I don't know them, but I got to believe that in that moment they feel they matter to somebody else. And what I'm told is there's the law of reciprocity, which is when someone does something nice for you, you feel a deep-seated urge to do something nice for someone else, and oftentimes in greater measure. And so I got to believe that not only did that person feel blessed by that cup of coffee or two, depending on who all's in the car, and I don't call it a random act of kindness because I do it intentionally, and I think it's just a little something I can do. And I've been blessed to be able to do that. Imagine if that car paid for the car behind them and the car behind them and the car behind them. I'm told it happens and it creates that positive ripple effect. So the idea of writing this book is about me paying it backward and writing it almost as if I were writing it to a young Mark Mears and mentoring him to say, what would I tell him if I knew then what I know now? And so, how many other people are out there who could benefit from the hard earned wisdom, the good, the bad, and the ugly that I've learned based on my own experiences, as well as observations of those who I admire, and a curation and research that supports my thesis, as well as subject matter experts that I can kind of bring in who can go deeper than I can go. And so it's really designed to be this kind of gift that keeps on giving, where someone who reads it, hopefully it blesses them and they can see how they can find and fulfill their purpose in both their life and their work, but they can also pay it backward to help others along their growth journey.
It's amazing. I love that. I know what you mean about 96% of people not finishing books because I started one 4 or 5 years ago and was like, where is this going? So it's been on pause for a while, but we have some similarities in our journey. I also left a C-suite job. I was recruited. I was restaurant chains as well. So I
Oh,
was
wow.
I was working. I was controller of Islands restaurants,
Yeah.
and then got recruited to another fast casual chain and did not enjoy the culture there. I think that for me, fulfillment it wasn't top of mind, but it was something that I just noticed. If I didn't feel it in my body would react and contract. And so I was, commuting the hour and a half each way to this job, and my stomach was just contracted and I was getting sick. And I was
Yeah.
like, I think this will turn into a much bigger problem if I don't make a change. So I stayed a year and then I took the leap and, left that comfort of
Mm,
those benefits and that
sure.
salary and started my own accounting firm with nothing and
Wow.
had to figure it out. But it was
Yeah.
definitely this adventure and like knowing I'm working for myself, I'm building something that I could one day hand off to my kids if they wanted it, or I could sell it, a legacy kind of thing that's so different than working, for somebody else. So when you have that kind of purpose, oh, and
Yeah.
that's another thing, that purposeful action thing.
Yeah.
Um, because I had never been in any kind of marketing position. I was in, finance, like
Yeah.
accounting, admin stuff. I would take all the purposeful action of setting up the legal entity, setting up the tech, setting up the software and all this stuff, but avoiding sales like the plague. And that you cannot have a business. Sales has to be the primary thing that you're doing when you're starting a business. If you don't have sales, you don't have a business. So that was really interesting to get myself, because every time I'd feel like I'd have to go out and network and meet people and talk to people. I was pretty introverted, and I would just be like, no, I just want to go back and get behind the computer and do some tech stuff.
I can relate, Rihanna, because I come from the marketing side. And so my job was basically to fill the funnel, right? So if we don't have guests, then we're not going to have profit. And the more guests we have and we treat them right and we price right, they're going to want to come back, tell their friends. And all of a sudden now we're toggling, the parts of the P&L that we can impact, right? But if you don't have enough on the top line, it's hard to squeeze it enough to get to the bottom line margin number that you want. So I relied on experts like you that could help guide me and my team to ensure that we were, going after profitable growth. Anybody can discount their way to getting more people in the door, but that tends to be short-lived and does not lead to greater margins. So it's finding the right balance. And I've always been a team guy. And so I loved working with finance. I just marvel at their ability to use their skills and abilities with numbers to tell stories that I could relate to in educating my team as to what our goal is. And so I have, two loves in business. I love building teams and I love building brands in that order. Because if you don't build the team, you can't build the brand. And that example that I gave you is I didn't do it by myself. I was the leader, but I put people around me that were smarter than me in their areas of expertise to where it was the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think that's, a big part of what I miss, because my team right now consists of 3 people, me, myself, and I. And we don't often get along, so I'm not sure how well that works.
Right.
But I can
Same
certainly
here.
relate. And we're, coming from the same, industry, it's hard. A lot of people feel like, the restaurant or hospitality industry, there's a lot of glamour involved and you get to work with food and beverages. And I love that. But for me, the greatest benefit is working with the people. And I love to go on restaurant tours, and I love to get, go behind the curtain to see the back of the house, which I'll, refer to as I was taught, the heart of the house. That's where it all happens. And so being able to relate to people on their level and have a sense of empathy with what they go through. I remember whether I had to or not, I insisted on working in the restaurants when I would go to a new brand. So I could experience what they experience firsthand. And after each day, I'd come home and go, wow, that's hard work. These people are, hourly wage employees, or I call team members, and they're working their tail off, and oftentimes in a thankless environment. And I marvel at them. I believe, Rihanna, that not only words matter, but names matter. And we were talking before about your name, Rihanna, and how it developed after the famous Fleetwood Mac song, although spelled different. It's still a cool story, right? That's your given name. Mine is Mark. But I always, if it's not on a name tag, I always ask someone their name. And it immediately levels the playing field. They feel treated like a human being, just like I am. I may be paying and they're serving me, but they're involved in that dining experience with me. And so I've found that, especially working for the Cheesecake Factory, I'm telling you, the amount of money they put into training is well more than my marketing budget, I assure you. And it's because they, use Ritz-Carlton training. It's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And it was a respectful, mutually respectful relationship where They knew they were part of the dining experience, that immersive, over-the-top Cheesecake Factory dining experience, and they could make or break it. And so it was really important to make sure that, when I go out, I recognize, and I don't care if it's Cheesecake Factory or if it's a coffee shop. I just came from my favorite one this morning when I'm not at Starbucks. It's a local coffee shop. I know everybody's name there, and they know mine. And we built a relationship over the last, I don't know how many years. And when new people come in, it's oh, there's Mark, and I'll say, "What's your name?" And I'll keep, perpetuating that. It's just a simple gesture of common humanity that makes their face light up and their countenance glow. And all of a sudden, hey, maybe you might even be getting better service than you would have otherwise. But I don't do it for that. I do it because I honor the hard work that these people do faithfully when they come in and pull their shift every day, and they deserve to be treated that way.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that Islands does is as they promote their corporate employees, they have I was a server at Islands like 10 years before I became their controller. So I knew the front of the
Wow.
house, but I got promoted and then went back to work with the restaurant manager to see what they were doing. And what was great about that was I got to ask him because we had all these accounting policies of all these things that we needed from the restaurant managers. And I was like, yeah, so why do we need that? Why do we need this? Why do we? So I was able to go back and slash a bunch of tasks off of
Mm,
their plate that they didn't really need to do, that were repetitive or just unnecessary stuff we didn't need. And so like they really appreciated that. We went paperless. It was
mm.
fun to actually, it felt like team, like we were a team.
Yeah, but here's what you did. You listened and you were curious, right? You could have just followed protocol, but you decided to wield your influence and change it for the better, right? And so it's ironic that segues into kind of this new book that I'm writing. I never thought I'd write one, but it's not really a sequel, if you will, but it builds off the Purposeful Growth Revolution. But now it's kind of this mission to put the human back in human resources. And I say to do so, all we need is love. And I don't mean the kind of love that's going to get you a quick call from HR and escort out of the building. I'm talking about a new model. If LEAF is a growth model for leaders and how they can grow from a leader to a legacy builder, love is a new model for how to do so as well. It stands for listen, observe, value, and empower. Listen to someone on a deeper, more empathetic level. And not only what they're saying, but maybe what they're not saying. We'd be naive to think that maybe something's not going on in their personal life that could impact the quality of their work, and ask good questions. And they may not want to answer right away, but by doing so, you'll build trust. And we know that trust is the foundation of any, successful relationship, right? So by listening, it comes back to one of our, Maslow's hierarchy and deepest needs is not only when we get past food and water and shelter and safety and sex, um, it comes down to how we feel as a human being. And then I studied Gallup and their State of the Global Workplace report that they do every year, and they focus on engagement or recently lack thereof. And do you know, Rihanna, that nearly $9 trillion of GDP is wasted through lack of engagement on a global basis? Okay, that's going to be on the first page of the book. And it's a wake-up call. And and from your finance background, that labor is, if not the top item on the P&L, it's right next to cost of goods, maybe back and forth, depending on what's going on in the world and the economy. So I got to thinking about, well, how can I now build off this purposeful growth revolution to now create this world where team members, not employees, feel loved. And then I started sketching this out. And it's the same four-circle Venn diagram, but it stands for listen, observe, value, and empower. I already broke down listen, right? It's first step. listening just like you did, observing just like you did. So observing means coaching and encouraging or mentoring, even critiquing in real time. You look at Gallup's poll and you see the dissatisfactors and you say, well, what can we do to change those? Well, they're pretty darn humanistic, feeling cared about at work, feeling a sense of connection to purpose at work, having clarity of what I'm supposed to be doing at work, on the front end, right? And then also having regular feedback as to how I'm doing throughout, right? The feedback's so critically important. And then we think about being able to do what I do best at work or the ability to learn and grow at work. Do any of these sound insurmountable? No. But what we have to do is move managers into leaders and help leaders grow into legacy builders. So we're listening and we're observing, and now we're valuing the whole person, not just as a worker, one dimensional, like some robot, but we're seeing them in all four realms of service, I call it personal, relational. So personal is ourself. We got to take care of ourselves, and the rest of them doesn't matter. Relational, those we love, those who love us. Professional, who do we serve at work? And spiritual, who do we serve? Is it a higher power like God or some other spiritual being that connects us together as humans? And so then looking at and valuing someone in all four realms of service as a whole person, that really gets at more than just compensation and recognition and reward, which are the ante to play in the game. You should do that, of course. But when you value something, from your finance background, you invest in it, right? If you value something, you invest in it. So how can we invest in an individual or a team member to make them feel valued? A great example is, let's say, Rihanna, you came to me and said, I'm really interested in making some positive changes in our team. And I think there's some ways we can use AI as a means to do so. I'm really interested in this. And I say, oh, I see that you live near the Bay Area. I found out there's this, what sounds like a great 3-day conference going on. Would you be interested in attending? And you'd say, well, sure. And so I invest in you to take time off and to go on this trip to the Bay Area and attend this conference. And then we could stop at value, but that's not really where the world of work is going. I now want to go through the E, which stands for empower. I want to empower you to be your very best, right? To help you grow into your full potential at work as well as outside of work. So now when you come back, I'm going to say, hey, Rihanna, I'd like for you to put together a presentation for the team about what you learned and specifically how you think you could apply it for all of us to be more productive or have higher job satisfaction or whatever way that this learning can benefit us. And then you say, great, I look forward to putting that together. And then I say, well, what resources do you need to do it? Well, I don't need much, but man, I'm working on 3 projects right now. If you could take one of those off my shoulders for a couple of weeks to help me get some time to go work on this, that would be great. Awesome. So then you go do that. You present to the team. You do a wonderful job. They're giving you high fives and clapping at the end. How do you feel? Right? You were empowered to do something you had the capability of doing, but needed the resources, the nudge, the encouragement to do it. And I liken it to when I learned to ride a bike, Rihanna. I don't know about you, but I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and I one birthday got this beautiful royal blue Schwinn Stingray bike, and it had a banana seat and handlebars, the mag wheel, the whole 9 yards. But I had training wheels because I wasn't really ready to ride it on my own. And I'm tooling around the neighborhood and I'm not falling because I got the training wheels to keep me balanced. But I remember one Saturday morning, my dad woke me up. He said, son, it's time to take the training wheels off. Are you ready? And I'm like equally excited, but also fearful because it's a new thing that I've never done. But I wanted to be like the big kid, so let's go do this. And he's taking the training wheels off and he's, talking to me about what I need to do. But more than that, He got me on the bike. He walked alongside with me, holding on the back and the handlebars. And again, telling me, Mark, you got to keep pedaling because if you don't, you'll lose your balance. And don't overcorrect when you need to steer because then you'll also lose your balance. And of course, I overcorrected and I stopped pedaling a few times and I fell over. And so I learned the hard way. And he got me back up. He told me what I did well. And he also said, here's what you need to now work on. And I remember when I finally got it, I rode down the end of the street, pedaling, I'm holding on, and I get to the end of the street, I stop, I'm able to turn around and go back. And I remember pulling up to the edge of the driveway, and I don't remember, whose grin was bigger, his or mine. But that sense of freedom, I can feel in my mind's eye and in my heart to this day that he empowered me to do something I was capable of doing, but needed the encouragement, needed the coaching, needed the resources. And that made all the difference. If you were to work in a loving environment like that, where you're listened to, you're observed, you're valued, and you're empowered to be your very best, who'd want to quietly quit that? Who'd want to leave that? So when you think about the positive aspects, and I love it that you're a finance person, you understand that when people are productive, are working together as a team, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and we know from our collective restaurant industry, tenured teams are more profitable teams. They know how to work together. And so they're going to not only give you more discretionary effort, they're going to have a stake of ownership in the outcome, and they're going to be more loyal, so longer tenure, and maybe help recruit other people to the company, right? So
Yeah.
look at that on the positive side. But now let's look at it on the negative side. Let's say we don't do that. Let's say someone leaves. Well, there's a hole to fill, right? And the cost of recruiting and hiring and training, it's not cheap, right? But
Mm.
also, what about the lost productivity of the couple of people who have to pick up the slack for that person who's gone and not getting paid any more money? You think they're going to be happy about that? They might want to leave on their own at some point. So it's a vicious cycle if we don't create a loving, nurturing environment where people feel valued, and it can become a positive cycle if we do. And so that's really where I'm going now, and it's really exciting, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback, and they're like telling me, Mark, this is very timely and relevant where we are in this new world of work, and especially among young people. They don't want to be managed and required. They want to be led and inspired. And so
Yeah.
Deloitte just sent a study out that they performed and said nearly 90% of millennials and Gen Z want purpose in their work. And so the Purposeful Growth Revolution is on. We need to create, loving communities, not just cultures. I believe words matter. And to me, a culture may be a place someone feels they're merely a part of. It's not bad, but a community is a place someone feels they belong in. And belonging is so important because you think about DEI, right? Diversity gets us in the door. That's great. Equity gives us an equal voice, better yet. Inclusion gets us a seat at the table, hallelujah. But if we don't feel like we belong, we're likely not going to be psychologically safe enough to be vulnerable and give up our very best. We don't want to
Yeah.
rock the boat and maybe lose our seat at the table or be taken out of that room. Well, we haven't now gotten the benefit of your gifts, or what I call total diversity. Most people think of diversity as just, outward factors, gender, race, creed, color, sexual orientation or preference, religion, politics, as we've recently seen. But that's great because you need to understand where people come from, their lived experiences. But that leads to inner diversity. And that is how people think and how they contribute to the greater good of the team. So think of this as a yin yang symbol. The yin yang symbol, you have to have both. And that creates total diversity. And until people realize that diversity is a powerful, competitive, and leverageable advantage for their firm and not just some political box to check, they will not be able to move the ball forward in advancing headwinds that are crushing us from all angles. We can't do what we did a year ago and get the same results because of those headwinds. We got to do a lot more. And so the only way to do that is creating an environment, a nurturing environment where people feel loved, they feel like their voice matters, and they feel like they belong. And so if they say something, it's not going to get boomerang back on them or be seen as a silly idea, but they're going to be seen as contributing to the shared values and the shared goals of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And something you said about you're getting the training wheels taken off your bike. It's a metaphor for business. Don't stop pedaling and don't overcorrect. but
Yes,
um,
yes.
but you also mentioned belonging and when you don't feel like you belong, you don't have the psychological safety
Mm,
to actually contribute and to be yourself, to feel like your voice is valued. And our companies, I think, because of the Industrial Revolution, we all became like assembly line workers, and it's just like get your tasks done and work these number of hours and then get out and just make sure you don't get your hand cut off. Even that wasn't a priority at the time.
yeah,
But now we're trying to remember, oh, these are communities. These are not just cultures, but communities. It's a family. We need to feel like we belong. Like one of the core wounds in human psychology from childhood, is this fear of not belonging, this fear of abandonment. Because as a
yeah,
baby, if you're
yeah.
abandoned, you will die. And if you don't feel like you belong, and so we're all carrying it around right
Yes,
now, like a fear of I don't belong, I don't belong. How do I make sure I belong? How do I behave in such a way that I belong? And most of the time we behave in such a way as to be quiet and be
yeah.
small and to
Hmm.
not share our gifts because we don't want to get reprimanded or thrown out, rock the boat, like you said. So it's
Yeah.
it's really important that we have this love and inclusion and diversity and safety.
Yeah, and you used the Industrial Revolution. I think that's where it started, but I think it really picked up momentum when GIs came back from World War II and
Yeah.
got into business and used the same type of command and control management style that they
Yeah.
were taught in the Army. Well, that works in the Army because people's lives are at stake, right? And you have to have a chain of command. I get it. And in business, it works to a point. But like I said, if you want to keep doing the same thing, like I don't still have a flip phone, right? I don't keep
Right.
doing things that no longer serve me. Well, this whole command and control management style no longer serves us. And I look at a manager and say, well, where did they come from? Well, most of us who went to business school, we maybe went to school of management, right? And we learned how to manage projects and resources and budgets and deadlines and metrics of performance and people. Well, that's tactical, right? Or transactional, I'll say, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a manager and I work for you, and by the way, Rihanna, I've never said in my career that anyone works for me. I said they work with me, but I'm going somewhere with this. And if I work for you and you're a manager, I'm going to say to myself, I must obey you. You've got the title. And that's, all I'm going to do is my work, right? So I want to move managers and help them grow into become leaders. Leaders is more relational. Like I said, you're building trust, where someone will then say, I will follow you willingly, right? Because I know you've got my back and my interest at heart. So we could stop there. But if you are now growing into a legacy builder, that means that person is transformational. And that person I just mentioned would say, not only will I follow you, but when it's my turn to lead, I will lead like you. So remember that concept of paying it backward. And this is kind of in my mind's eye, I'm seeing this ripple effect. So if I just had one direct report and I put a pebble in the pond, we don't see the pebble after it goes underneath the water, right? We see the ripple effect on top of the water. Well, now what if I have 4 or 5 or 6 direct reports? Now I'm able to throw 4 or 5 or 6 pebbles in the water and see the exponential benefit that changing someone from a transactional manager to a relational leader and now into a transformational legacy builder can be. And that's really what's driving me in doing what I do now to help pay it backwards and see if we can't, transform the tired old command and control management style into a more relational, humanistic leadership style for the benefit of all stakeholders, not only our team members, but our guests or customers or clients, depending on what your industry is. I like guests because those of us in the hospitality industry will use that. Our business partners, and not just investors or shareholders, but anybody in our ecosystem, right? It could be our manufacturing partners, our suppliers, distributors, agency partners, you name it. And then our communities. And that to me is the fourth stakeholder. And that is why I am so active in conscious capitalism, as you mentioned in my bio, elevating humanity through business. When capitalism works at its highest form, that's what it can do and has done for years. Of course, what gets covered are the Enron scandals or the savings and loan and real estate crap that went on that caused, the great, recession back in the mid to late aughts. I know it because that's when I lived in California and I bought at the peak of the market. And 8 years later, I lost still a ton of money. So I was part of that. And what did make me feel very good about capitalism. But
Yeah.
when it's at its highest form and it's acting the way it's supposed to be, it has the ability to make change in the world. I mean, think about it. Governments haven't proven all that effective in doing so.
No.
Religious organizations and nonprofits can only do so much, but business has the resources and the reach and the ability to make change. And so I love hearing stories about Patagonia, who says their mission is to save our home planet. It isn't to sell more outdoor gear, right? And so that's what I mean by purpose. And they're obviously incredibly profitable. So it's not purpose or profit, as some people think. It's and purpose and profit. And it will lead you oftentimes to that. If you build purpose into your business model, it will likely help you attract more and better quality team members. It will likely be a decision point to guests or customers or consumers. And I hate that word, but you know what I'm saying. Because studies have shown that they're willing to pay more for a product or service that comes from a purposeful organization that they have the shared value in. Your business partners will be more profitable because of the above, and then your communities will be enriched because of your giving back into the community. So there is this virtuous cycle of reciprocity that is woven throughout all of us in business, and we just have to tap into it. And again, for the benefit of all four stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of being a transformational leader is, you know, you cannot be a taskmaster anymore because you need the time and space and presence to be with your team members to even listen to them so that you can do the thing, like you said, empower them to go
Right.
to the conference and do the presentation. And sometimes, when you have direct reports as a manager, you've learned, you're like, you've recently been promoted and now you don't have all these tasks on your plate and you're like, what am I supposed to be doing? Because this is what happened to me when I got
Yeah.
promoted to controller. I was like, well, I can't just sit here. Like, and, and my boss was like, Rihanna, at some point in life, you realize that everything is not about money. And you're here to lead, to manage.
Yeah.
And so my employees would come in and just talk to me. We just talk about life, and I just could not wrap my head around that was a major part of my job.
Yeah, I've never been fortunate throughout my career to have that much free time, but I like what you said is how what you're doing, you were investing in those people. Okay. That's what I mean by investing, right? Because now if you don't invest in them, they can't feel empowered. And then you'll end up doing their tasks
Right.
because you
Right.
didn't set them up for success. and not just to take things off your plate, but to have them feel a sense of value. And that's why I love the word team members versus employees. I grew up playing sports and I loved team sports. And so I loved the camaraderie and the esprit de corps, the blood, sweat, and tears, where we're all pulling together for a shared outcome, but also the sense of duty. Like, I don't want to let my team members down. This is the role I've been asked to play. And I think when people feel that sense of duty, then you know you've got engagement. Then you know you've got higher quality of output, right? And then you know you've got them wanting to stay longer because they enjoy their jobs, right? And then they're going to tell others about you. Like I said, it's kind of a net promoter score thing where it's like, hey, man, you seem so, you talk about your work all the time, Mark. I was like, well, yeah, I enjoy where I work quite a bit. And I love my team. I love what we're doing. I love the purpose that we share together. And we talk about purpose and community. You're like, well, what does that mean? Well, I've been in restaurant concepts, and also I was the head of sales and marketing at Universal Studios Hollywood, and other organizations where we gave back in our community. At Universal Studios, we had this whole day of giving, where everybody on staff would go get on buses and go throughout the LA area and work throughout that day. And we'd come back together at the end of the day, and we'd have a huge dinner, and we were tired, but we were really feeling good, like we did something well in the community. And then certain restaurant concepts like Cheesecake Factory, we work with Feeding America, the nation's largest food bank network, or Noodles and Company, where I was CMO. We worked with No Kid Hungry. And at Mimi's, where I was president, we worked with the National Heart Association's Go Red for Women movement, National Breast Cancer Foundation, and Children's Miracle Network. So we were using our means to help give back to others in need. And in doing so, we were rallying everybody around a common cause that made their job, whether it was a restaurant manager, assistant manager, a server, somebody who worked in the theme park, managing rides. It brought us all together as a common bond of humanity where we could give back in our communities. And everybody felt like those were some of the best events, the best days that we ever had during the year.
Yeah, that's really beautiful to give back to the community and to do it together. It sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, one of the issues that I had in that job was like I had too much time on my hands. I got bored, so I kept trying to find new initiatives for like what how can we be more efficient? How can we do?
Yeah.
And at the beginning I sat with each of my employees and observed them doing their job and asked them why are you doing this? I don't know, I was told to. Oh, okay. And then they go on to the next task and they're doing the exact same thing but different steps, and I mean getting the same result, and I was like, why are you doing this? You just did that. They're like, they told me I had to. And then a third time in some of the positions, just a different way. And I was like, no, we're not doing any of this. So everybody, when I first got there, was panicked and stressed and a little bit of overtime. They had a boss before me that required them to use their PTO to add up to 8 hours at the end of the day if they didn't work their full 8 hours. So they couldn't take vacation. It was the strangest thing I had ever heard.
Wow.
So I, went and we eliminated tasks and we automated a bunch of stuff through Excel. So then like everybody was relaxed and we're calm and people were able to take vacation. And then we found out we had positions that we didn't need. And so we would, if a person was ready to leave, we just didn't rehire for that position. We eliminated it. But it's really like important to have that, to be able to, my upper management would listen, but they would be like, you have so many ideas, we can't implement all of these. And so it's, fulfillment, engagement, growth, opportunity. Like I couldn't stay in that position long term and just sit there. It wasn't, so I ended up getting my master's while I needed to put my time to use. Right.
Yeah.
And
it's unfortunate that you had to leave that position given that you were literally demonstrating the love model. You were listening to your team members, you were observing them and encouraging and mentoring, but sometimes, changing things. You were valuing them for the roles that they were playing, and then as people by having them, come in and talk to you about everything, and then you were empowering them to go, be their best. And what is galling to me is that, senior level leaders who grew up in the command and control management style, they're going to quickly become dinosaurs where we're going to discover their fossils at some point. Because young people today, they're not going to put up with it. Okay, we had to in my generation because we didn't have an option. They have options today. Whether they're doing what you did and creating their own business, the gig economy where they're able to, piece together the lifestyle they want and make the kind of money they want, because they're really not interested in the myth that we all bought into, at least I did in my generation, which was work-life balance. And it's a myth, I
Yeah.
guarantee you. They want to pursue just the opposite: life, work, purpose. And so that's really what people have to understand is, okay, we live in this new world of work, and it certainly has changed a ton in the last 4 or 5 years, since COVID. I believe trends were already moving in this direction, but I think it's almost like COVID put them all into a microwave and heated them up, and all of a sudden we're, fast forward into the future faster than we were able to keep up with. And so we're still having the debate of hybrid versus remote working. What does it mean to provide more autonomy to younger people who want it, and they want more flexibility, and they want more say, and they want more information access? Um, we have to be willing to be open-minded. Otherwise, we're going to be walking around with our stinking flip phones or our Blackberries, and wondering how and when did the world change?
Yeah.
It did, and it ain't going backwards. So it's time for you to step up if you're a senior leader and build a foundation where communities within the organization can happen that ultimately ladders up to the whole organization. But they're micro communities. If you work in accounting, right, in or finance, and you're a controller, right, you have a group of people that have areas of expertise, and they need to feel a sense of community among themselves. I worked in the marketing and menu development side, same thing. But then when we come together, we have a shared community. And senior leader managers need to be leaders and provide that space, provide that opportunity, be curious, ask questions, and say what and how can we make this a better work experience for you? Not just a workplace, but a work experience. And that again comes back to, if you think this is a bunch of tree hugging, seal loving, namby-pamby, airy fairy cotton candy, you're missing the point. If you are
Mhm.
just a hard, bottom line person, it is your bottom line. We're helping not just to protect, but to grow based on the
Yeah.
financial levers that I mentioned earlier. So
Yeah.
get on board, or get off and retire and let someone
Yeah.
else lead.
Yeah. And I think when you find yourself in that position and you realize that you have all this resistance to the change, because the change is ultimately for the better. It's bettering people's lives. People have more access to more luxury or even basics than they've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
The trend over time has been that. Um, and if you're a person that just feels like it should be the way it always was, then you're not at all connected with yourself and your soul
Yeah.
and who you really are. You're just still trying to please those people that were teaching you the command control way. And so it's really a, a wonderful exploration
Yeah.
to take a step back and get reacquainted with who you really are. Who were you before you became that person? You were a
Yeah.
kid once who wanted to have
Yeah.
a purpose and had dreams and wanted to create things and make things. And, you've been conditioned to be this hard bottom line person, but that's not really who you are. And so to stay relevant, and to
Yeah.
be a part of the community, which ultimately is what we all want. I had that boss that told me, money's not everything. And because I was like, I need a bigger raise and a bigger raise, and I got him. But I, at some point, you do learn, yeah, it's actually more about the relationships and the community and belonging and
Yeah.
safety and love. Money's great, but you can earn it and lose it. It comes and goes. And even no matter how conscious you are, life throws things and you just learn how to deal with them better the more conscious you are. But
Yeah.
community relationships, being able to actually be open-hearted and love people is far more, that's what you walk away with when your life is over. You don't walk away with money.
Well, no, and no one's going to remember what were your earnings in the third quarter of 2021, right?
Yeah.
What they're going to remember, and I love the poem from Maya Angelou, and it says, "I've learned that people will forget what you've said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So I say, regardless of what industry you may be in, we're all in the people business. Well, until the robots or zombies or Chat GPT takes us away, we're all in the people business. So if we're in the people business, we have to be in the feelings business because that's what people remember is how you made them feel. So people then say, Mark, that sounds great. How do I do this? I'm in an environment where I don't know if this would go over very well, or I've done things the same way and I'm comfortable in it. And yeah, I realize change is coming, but I'm not sure I want to take the risk. And I say, think about love, right? All of us have been in love at one point or another, and hopefully some of us still are. Um, what was it like? You had to take a risk. You didn't know maybe how the other person felt. So you had to take a leap of faith. You had to take a risk of potential that it wasn't shared on the other side, right? No positive thing ever happens by people playing it safe. You've got to be willing to throw yourself out there and take a risk. So practically, let's say I'm a mid-management leader and I've been leading in that kind of black and white, dollars and cents way. And I hear you, Mark, but how do I change and how do I show my team? It comes from humility. If it were me and I've done this, I'd bring the team together and say, hey, I realize that I've been managing you and not leading you. I've looked at the bottom line versus your lives and your work experience more, and I'm letting you know, and I'm not saying I'm never going to be perfect, but I'm going to be really working on that. And I've heard of this love model, and I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to observe you and value and empower you to be your very best. And I want you to hold me accountable to that. What do you think would be the result of that meeting? Everybody would be breathing a sigh of relief, going, "Oh my God, he finally is starting to get it,"
Yeah.
right? And there might be some, trepidation, like anything when you start something new. But then your job is to show up every day and actually, act on what you just said. But that demonstration of humility and vulnerability, we're all human beings. They would react so well to that. And the next thing you know, you're building trust, you're building a relationship. You're seen as now a leader they want to follow, not just someone they have to obey. And all of a sudden they're saying, man, that really touched me. When it's my turn to lead, I want to lead like him or her.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, it's been so great having you here today. We're over time. Didn't realize it. That was fun.
Well, thank you. I
And
really appreciate it, Rihanna, and I hope your listeners derive some value from this. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you and everyone. If you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, follow me, I'll follow you back, and we can connect and keep the conversation going because I love to learn. As I mentioned, I'm a growth junkie, so I want to learn from you. And I'd also ask that if you're so inclined, you're interested in this whole idea of finding and fulfilling your purpose in life and work, on my website at Mark A. Mears, Mears, is a purposeful growth self-assessment. And it takes about 5 or 6 minutes to fill out. And when you're done, I will then send you a full color PDF customized report with your scores and some seeds for growth from me. So that would be helpful as well. And that way we could maybe start a dialogue and you can kind of see where are you right now in kind of this whole concept of purposeful growth in both your life and in the workplace. And so that to me is a gift that we can give each other after this podcast is aired.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I'm looking forward to doing the assessment myself. It's been great
Excellent.
having you.
Thanks, Rihanna. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Have a great afternoon.
You did the same. Thank you.